In wilds beyond, they speak your name with reverence and regret, for none could tame our savage souls, yet you the challenge met. Under palest watch, you taught, we changed, base instincts were redeemed, a world you gave to bug and beast as they had never dreamed. Hollow Knight is a game I'd heard people talk about for years. Reviewers, random gamers online, funny Brap Man and the Better Slop channel loved it. Everyone seemed to agree it was something special. But for me, I never actually have touched the game before. Not because I didn't want to, I do want to try play every critically acclaimed game ever made, but it's just because I've never really found the time to. But when I finally did decide to sit down and play the game due to you guys voting for it, it felt like I was walking into something impossible. This wasn't just another game anymore. It had been elevated to a near mythic status that very few games actually reach. A so-called masterpiece by almost everyone. People swore up and down that this was a must-experience game. A perfect game, if you will. And with its sequel finally coming out, all I heard about the game was it's a masterpiece. You need to play it. It's a top 100 games you need to play before you die. And when something gets that much praise, I usually walk in with the exact opposite of excitement. I get skeptical. Because more often than not, that kind of reputation for me sets a game up to fail. I've had it happen so many times before. When friends insisted that The Last of Us was the pinnacle of storytelling in games, only for me to find it surprisingly underwhelming and kind of bland. Or when other games get labelled by other creators as hidden gems or forgotten masterpieces, like Fear and Hunger, which I found was okay, but nothing really that special. To me, they're just kind of There's plenty of games that I'm sure many of you see get labelled as hidden masterpieces or forgotten masterpieces, and they're not. I very rarely try to use that label because I don't want to mislead people. I will only use that title when I genuinely believe a game has earned it either for personal reasons or from a critical reason. And if you want a different medium that might piss some of you off, when Attack on Titan was sold to me like it was the second coming of Christ, and I watched all of Attack on Titan and I wondered what was the fuss about. I will be honest, I did not like Attack on Titan. I'm just gonna let that simmer. So when I finally sat down with Hollow Knight, my standards weren't just high, they were guarded and genuinely above every game I've ever sat down and played before. I was expecting the world from this game. I half expected to beat the game and play through it and not really feel anything from the game. But here's the thing. Instead of it crumbling under those expectations and all the weight of that, the game itself proved it in flying colours. It didn't just earn its praise, it demanded it. This wasn't just another well-made indie title. It was something that pulled me in, tested me, and left me in awe in a way that I was not prepared for. And that's really what I want to talk about. How Hollow Knight took all my doubts, all my skepticism, and shattered them completely. Now I'm going to get this out of the way immediately. Hollow Knight is very clearly, and I mean very clearly, inspired by Dark Souls. There is no two ways about it. From the whole game's story setup to simple mechanics like benches acting as bonfires, the respawn feature where you have to go go kill yourself or go reach the point where you died again, to even things like the way the world map is laid out, how it loops back on itself like a big layered cake, or even the very similar final boss. But I'm not going to comment on the boss right now. Dark Souls itself is an incredibly important game, not only for me, but also the gaming industry. It has been a game that I've been trying to make a video on since I started this channel. It is the reason I started this channel, but I have not been able to write a script that I have been happy with to actually make that video. If you want to know, I've probably wrote about 12 to 15 scripts for a Dark Souls video. One of them got pretty far, but I kind of just dropped it because I just didn't like it. I will make the video one day, but it is a pain to get that script right. But playing Hollow Knight, it felt very nostalgic throughout the entire game. Not in a bad way, but in almost a very interesting way to me, because it mirrors a lot of what I felt while playing Dark Souls a couple years back. I thought I would mention it now, and I'm not going to keep mentioning Dark Souls. I'm not going to say, oh, this is inspired by Dark Souls throughout the entire video. This is it. The game is very heavily inspired by Dark Souls in almost all aspects, but I'm going to leave it at that. Also, I'm going to put an arachnophobia warning, because honestly, even though these are all pretty cute little monsters, some of the spiders I definitely think would set off some people's arachnophobia. So if you've got bad arachnophobia, be warned. I will mention when the spiders appear, and I might put them on screen for maybe 2 minutes, maybe less, but just be careful and hopefully you don't shit yourself. But yeah, let's get into the game now. Hollow Knight does something that many games are terrified to do, and that is not open with action and an insane boss fight, but some simple environments that teach you how to fight and how to move. But also the game teaches you about hidden treasures that will be scattered throughout the entire map, but alongside those treasures, environmental traps. Enemies are not the only things out to kill you. The world itself is trying to attack you as well. It almost sets the tone of the game as a very dark, very grim world that is all against you. Nothing is on your side. And that's kind of what the main theme is here. Everything is against the little knight here on their journey. But what in the world is this game about? What is the actual story? Well, the game is in no hurry to tell you. The opening cutscene does give you a hint with some figures that you won't know the name of and something that you don't understand, but it's very clear that the knight here was called to the lands that we're going to visit by whatever was in that egg thing and was screaming out in what seemed to be pain. But again, this is something that Hollow Knight does. It doesn't tell you the story. It doesn't spoon feed it to you. You have to figure the game's story out for yourself. It's very much up to your own interpretation. And I think that's kind of the coolest thing about this game itself. A lot of the discussion I saw online when I was researching the game's mainly endings and also story points was a lot of people were just sort of almost making things up, trying to figure it out themselves, because nothing is ever told. Team Cherry, they don't tell us anything. They keep everything very close to their chest. So a lot of the community just make up what they think is right. And I think that will become very apparent with the endings when we get onto them. But for the start of the game, we are given a little something. We are given this very ambiguous message about us entering the land of kings and creators and higher beings itself, a place called the Eternal Kingdom, but no kingdom in our history has ever lasted forever. So what made this one last eternal? Was it these higher beings? Was it a great ruler, a great king? Or was it the creator themselves, God itself, forcing this kingdom to remain eternal? That is the central question that will be answered throughout our journey. What made this kingdom eternal? What did the people do to try prevent its downfall? And our journey brings us to a very specific place. Dirtmouth, the fading town. Dirtmouth itself will act as the central hub that you will return to engage with a couple of vendors, but they will not be unlocked at this point in the game. We will need to progress further in the game and find them to actually unlock them. But we can meet the Elderbug. The Elderbug here mentions a great kingdom that lies beneath our feet, that has entirely fallen into ruin, and many adventurers, like us, have descended down into the well to seek glory, meaning, treasure, whatever it may be. Many of them do not return. But it almost sets up a narrative that we aren't that special. We're not a chosen hero. We're not the only one to make this journey. We are one of many, and we are just another person who has come to this place for some reason. What is our reason? We don't know exactly yet, but we do have an idea that it has something to do with that black egg and that figure inside of it. But we now follow in the footsteps of those travellers and enter the Forgotten Crossroads, entering our first true area of the game, and Hollow Knight is a true Metroidvania. It is open as hell, which, while making it an amazing game and super fun to play, it directly encourages player exploration first and foremost, and makes this game just so fun to just run around exploring, diving into every nook and cranny, fighting and just figuring the game out. There is one slight problem with it. It makes it a pain in the ass for me to actually script it. So I'm not even going to try script this video in a tangible way that you can follow and really understand the full game. I'm not going to go in depth for this game. I'm going to skip a hell of a lot of content, but if you want to play this game for yourself, I will probably cover maybe 10% of it. There is just too much in this game, and this video would have to be about 10 hours long for me to really make a dent in it. And I will be honest, I do not want this video to be that long. So first of all, let's just talk about the game in general. Hollow Knight, to me, has 5 key strengths that elevate it to something greater: visuals, map design, enemy variety, combat, and freedom. The first is very apparent: visuals. Graphics is often a debate in games that I think is very misguided. Hyper-realistic style graphics does not make a game good graphically. If you look at all of Sony's library, people will point to them and say these are the best looking games that we have. But I would argue a lot of them look quite bland and boring. To me, Death Stranding 2 is the peak of what hyper-realistic graphics can be. A lot of these hyper-realistic graphic games to me now are reaching a point of almost uncanny valley. The hyper-realistic graphics that people often love, to me, is almost overdone at this point now, and it makes games look so bland and boring. It doesn't help that some studios are just really good at this style. Think of course, any of the survival horror games like Bloober's Silent Hill 2, Capcom's recent Resident Evil games, and of course Death Stranding 2, which looks absolutely gorgeous. They are eye candy. These are the best looking hyper-realistic games we have ever gotten. But that means any game that looks slightly worse in any metric, be it some muddy textures or bad hair physics, anything, it makes them look a hell of a lot worse. Graphics itself isn't just, does this look good? Does it look realistic? Graphics aren't good if it looks realistic, and I think that's what a lot of people get confused by, because unfortunately that's what a lot of developers market, that this is the most realistic game we've ever made. Graphics are a hell of a lot more, and just looking at Hollow Knight, it's absolute eye candy. From lighting to its shadows, screen effects like fog and smoke, it all adds an immersive layer to the game. And of course, graphics is only one side of the visual coin. The other side is its art style itself. Art style is something that not a lot of games really, in my eyes, especially in the AAA area, really take advantage of. And when they do, they get fucking killed off. Like Xbox with Tango Gameworks, still have not forgiven them for that. But just look at Hollow Knight. It's uncompromising on its art style. It has a very unique art style. It's very bug-like. Everything has a bug-like structure to it. And I don't know how to explain that in any sort of detail, but all the characters are bugs, all the environments and buildings, they have some sort of bug-like characteristic to them, but it makes the game have its own character. And to me, it means Hollow Knight in 10 more years, 20 more years, will still hold up graphically really well. It will still be a great looking game. Any of the hyper-realistic games that are coming out now will age very quickly, but this won't. This will be one of those games that you can go back to and still think looks really good, because it focuses much more on presenting a much more unique art style. But it's not only that, all the environments themselves are somewhere where you would find bugs. They're all underground, of course, but they all mirror real life bug environments. I mean, the whole game basically takes place underground, so you kind of have to do that. But again, even the buildings that we find later, they have items inside of them that are very bug-like in their characteristics, from tables, chairs, windows, lights. Art style is a very important thing for games to use. It allows them to forge a very unique identity that allows them to stand out much further beyond any other game. And Team Cherry knew that. Hollow Knight needed something that really elevated it beyond just being another Metroidvania, because being in that genre, you have some very stiff competition from not only Metroid, but also Castlevania. But if you want me to really hammer home my point in how important it is in today's market, think about any corporate slop game you can think of. Fortnite, any of these games. Think of the hundreds of BRs that came out and they all look the same. They don't stand out, and they all have these crossover characters that just don't work. yeah, it was fun having Thanos in Fortnite for a week, but having all games have this now, having crossovers with characters that don't belong in the game, ruins the game's identity and makes them blend together. I think it's crazy now that a game like COD has so many crossover characters that I could genuinely get it confused with some knockoff game that's from like China or something that has all these crazy cosmetics. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me anymore why games think this is a good idea, because it almost ruins the game itself in a way. Art style and theming itself makes Hollow Knight already stand above and apart from other games. It demands you look at it, and once you look at it, it grabs your eyes and you can't look away. This game gave me the same feeling I got when playing Elden Ring, and going down that one elevator everyone liked. The only difference is that feeling that I had in that elevator in Elden Ring, it happened everywhere in Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight is filled with gorgeous scenery and these beautiful backdrops that you just can't get your eyes off, and I love it. It's a game that you very rarely get to play, and it's a game that is just completely different from everything else around it. I'm sure if any of the big publishers got their hands on this game, they would change the art style drastically to try and meet a more friendly look for the consumers, because it's a bit too dark and a bit too dirty for that general consumer base. But even in its visuals and everything, it's tied perfectly into its music choice as well. Music is one of the greatest things this game has as well. It all ties into the environments really well, and it makes the game visually even better, which is such a unique thing to see in a game when music is used so well. Plenty of games use music in gameplay. Think of any rhythm-based game there is now, which are very popular at the moment, I will be honest. Hi-Fi Rush being obviously one of the more recent examples that used music in a more meaningful way. But very rarely do games use music to elevate visuals, which is what Hollow Knight does. Not only does it tie into gameplay with boss fights having their own themes, but each area has distinct backtracks, which almost elevate what you're feeling when navigating these areas. The dark, deep areas of Hallownest have these slightly creepy, dark sounding themes that are very put you on edge. They make you feel slightly scared, but then in the higher areas that are more well lit, you have these sort of more upbeat tunes that make you feel, hey, this is a great grand adventure. Or the City of Tears having more of a sad sounding song, which fits with the theme of the City of Tears. It elevates what you're meant to be feeling from the visuals. It almost ping-pongs what the visuals are trying to hammer home by using music to elevate it as well. This is me just waffling, but it is so hard to explain this concept, but I hope you get the point I mean with the music. Just play the game yourself and tell me what you feel in each area, and tell me what made you feel that way. Was it the visuals, was it the music, or was it both together? But its next strength is very important for any game, of course: gameplay. Hollow Knight is split into two general categories: exploration and combat. Let's start with exploration. The game is very fun to explore. From the multitude of collectibles that you can find all over the place, like these little grubby boys, to the charms and upgrades for your own guy. It not only acts as a general reward for exploring, but exploring, of course, is essential for progression in a Metroidvania. You will need to find key items to progress further into the world. So you will be obtaining a new skill or an item, and then you will return to a previously explored area and now access a new spot within that area, which you can then further progress through. This leads to the game feeling very refreshing when you're backtracking, because it doesn't feel annoying but intriguing. You always ask the question, was there something I forgot? Was there something that I can now obtain from a previous area? And of course there's platforming as well. Don't even get me started on the endgame platforming, because man, that shit is fun and reminds me a lot of Super Meat Boy, not only in how the platforming works but in how much it annoys me. The platforming is really good, and honestly I think I preferred the platforming to the combat, and I had way more fun with it. Very rarely do I actually really enjoy platforming games. I often drop them about halfway through because I kind of just feel like I'm getting done with them, but I really enjoyed Hollow Knight for its platforming, which is really rare for me. But something that I think was very important for this game was its combat, which a lot of Metroidvanias often struggle with. They never really ascend past what Metroid or Castlevania do. So does Hollow Knight do anything differently? Yeah, it does. It really does do something different. So first of all, you have basic attacks, of course, the ability to bounce off enemies with your nail, some special moves with your nail which are fairly situational that honestly you don't need to even touch, and you've got some spells which are pretty decent. And honestly, this would be easily the weakest part of the game if this was it, if it was just fighting basic enemies with this very limited moveset. But luckily for Hollow Knight, its combat, while simple, is significantly enhanced by its other key strengths, with platforming tying into combat, but also the enemy design. There are so many enemies in this game that I can't go over all of them. I always want to rank every enemy that I fight in a game, but there's over 100 in this game and we would be here for probably about 2 hours ranking them. Every enemy in this game are distinct and all have different abilities, health, speed, how their armor reacts, their attack patterns, their size, how far they get knocked back when you hit them. They all have these different things that make a massive difference in how you approach them as enemies. And this is most seen, of course, with the boss fights, which are Hollow Knight's best enemy designs in general. These bosses really push you to your limits, and it almost feels like it's pushing the game to its limits as well with what you need to do with your fingers on the controller or keyboard. While its combat is simple, you don't have a lot that you can actually do, there's no crazy combos that you can input, it becomes so much more because you have to focus on spacing, movement, when to attack, when to dodge, what spells to use, what equipment you want to bring into it, how you want to actually attack a boss fight, when to attack a boss, when an opening is, reading animations. It's all these different things that play a massive role in combat. You're always jumping, dashing and strafing past attacks, and all while you have to cut into enemies' defenses and then land hits on these bosses who, if you let them, they can very easily just combo you to death if you don't move around correctly, if your spacing is poor. The game itself almost has a flow-like state where once you start to actually learn the enemy's moveset and how it moves and when you should attack, you find yourself naturally gliding around the arena, dodging attacks really gracefully and cutting in as soon as you know when the opening is coming. It's almost like a dance-like rhythm, and that's kind of what I describe any Souls game like. It has a dance-like rhythm to it. It's a back and forth rhythm with you reading your enemy's movements and then counter-attacking when you know the opening is coming, which makes me love the game so much more. I'm a massive Souls-like fan. I love almost every Souls-like I've picked up and played, and this game is no exception. I love learning boss fights. I love trying to figure out how to beat them, and it makes them so much more fun to actually fight. I will be honest though, as much as I love the boss fights, I think the game does push the boss fights a bit too much. They're still very simple for Souls-like bosses, and I think Silksong probably improved this a lot by expanding the combat a lot more, especially with enemy attacks. But I found myself very much at the end of the game starting to get annoyed of fighting the same boss. I'm sure you guys can figure out what boss I'm talking about, but at the end of the game you have to fight a boss to fight another boss, and I kind of just got sick of the first boss because it was just so boring to fight because I knew every animation almost perfectly. But that is like a 1 in the hundreds of bosses that you fight in this game, so it's not that bad honestly. Because man, I beat Prime Radahn before the nerf, and that was hell. That was the worst thing I've ever experienced in my life. And last but certainly not least, of course, with its biggest strength, is Hollow Knight's freedom. Hollow Knight not only doesn't tell you shit about what is going on, it doesn't tell you shit about what to actually do. You have to figure it out yourself. So where does our journey take us? Well, here in the Forgotten Crossroads, we can find quite a few very important places. First of all, we can meet our best friend in the entire game, Cartographer Cornifer. Now, Cornifer here will sell you a partial map for the area that you are currently in, and it is up to you to update the map and fill in the map yourself. The map will give you some paths that you can explore, and from these paths you should then of course find more paths and more of the area, and eventually you will fill out the entire area map. And this is something the game does really well. You need to explore the area, then return to a bench to then unveil the map. It doesn't just give you the map and then allow you to just look at the map constantly and figure out where to go. You still have to figure that out yourself, but of course when you start backtracking and searching for specific items, it will help a lot when you have the map unlocked for that reason. But also, it is so satisfying. I love when games let you do this, when you have the blank map at the start and then you can slowly build up the map until you have the full map unlocked at at the very end of the game. It's so cool, and it's something that I love when any game does this. But when we actually find Cornifer, his shop will open up in Dirtmouth, which will allow you to buy the map of the area that you visited if you beat a specific boss in the area, because each area has a main key boss that acts as the main boss of the area. So if you defeat them, Cornifer leaves and goes to another area. So of course, if this happens, you can go up to Dirtmouth and buy the map from his wife, which, damn, he's done well for himself, ain't he? But past the fine fellow, we will eventually find our very first bench, which act as our bonfires, and our first stag station. These will act as a way for us to quickly travel around the map to specific stag stations. This game doesn't have fast travel, so you will need to return to these stations if you want to jump to the other end of the map later in the game, because trust me, you'll be doing that a hell of a lot, especially later in the game. But this also allows you to return to Dirtmouth if you want to buy anything from Cornifer's shop, as you've just unlocked him. Now, the stag here might raise a question to you. Why are we killing all these bugs? Why are we just attacking every bug we see on site, when this one here seems pretty chill and he is pretty helpful? Well, just like the Elder Bug stated, this kingdom has fallen into ruin with a sickness or plague spreading throughout the people. This is causing a madness-like state where they will attack you on sight. They aren't zombies, they will retain their memories and they will keep doing the jobs that they're meant to, as later in the game we can find city guards that are still guarding the city, or miners who are still mining in the mines, but they will stop doing their job and will start to attack you once they spot you. So this plague, whatever it is, causes the infected to just go out of their way to attack anything that is not infected, to either kill it or try to infect it as well. But what was the cause of this plague? Well, that is the key question that we need to investigate. And again, I'm sure it has something to do with that figure that we saw in the opening. But here we can actually enter our very first boss fight against the False Knight. And I think this is a really great boss fight to begin with and talk about for a few key reasons. First of all, the False Knight clearly shows us that bosses are very different to normal enemies in not only how they fight, but how we should approach them. Boss fights encourage dodging a lot more because the bosses of course have way more health, but also the False Knight teaches us about how bosses fight with these slow, highly telegraphed attacks, which will hopefully teach you to learn timings and when you should dodge or when you should attack. It teaches you how to look at the animations and figure out what attack is incoming, but it also teaches you about spacing, when to back off, when to jump, when to dodge, when to move forward, and also it teaches you that bosses can be stunned, allowing you to get free attacks in. It teaches you everything that you need to know about the boss fights in this game, and their differences from regular enemies in how you fight them and how you move around them. And I like it. I genuinely think the False Knight is one of the best first boss fights that could have been made to this game, because it's not too hard, but it's not too easy. Of course, I was still figuring out the controls because it's been a while since I played on a controller, so my fingers were still slipping up a bit, which you can probably tell by the gameplay because I keep getting hit constantly. But eventually I did beat it, and after beating the boss we will be rewarded with a lot of Geo, which is the currency of this game, and a little bit further we can meet a shaman, with the shaman giving us our first spell, which will allow us to use our soul to use a ranged attack, and soul is also another really cool mechanic in my opinion. So when you attack an enemy, you gain a small amount of soul. Soul can either be focused to regain health if you lost health, or it can be exchanged to use spells, like Vengeful Spirit here, and this adds a level of player decision to the game. This spell is really useful as it can be used as a ranged attack, allowing you to keep distance and still do damage to an enemy. You will mainly use this to do a little bit of bonus damage when an enemy is attacking or doing something that you can't close the distance and hit them with your nail. But what I really like about the use of spells in this game is that it makes you weigh up using the soul for either healing in a defensive manner or aggressively with spells. And the thing is, you will want to use your soul as much as possible because every hit you do to an enemy will give you a small amount of soul. So if you're full on soul and you're attacking enemies, it's almost a waste of the resource itself. You might as well always use a spell to do some damage or at least heal to full health just to use it up, because it kind of feels like when you're attacking it's a bit of a waste when you're not doing that. Man, I feel fucking so tired, man. And a little bit later, and after defeating the Gruz mother, we can find our very next shopkeeper, Sly. Sly here is our main vendor, with them selling a lot of useful items from master shards to soul orbs and a lot of charms and charm notches. And charms are something that I should mention. Charms are something that you can equip which will give you some sort of benefit in some way, be it the ability to see where you are on the map to increasing your nail range or speeding up healing. They all do very different things, mostly, and all cost a certain amount of notches to use, so often the more powerful ones use more notches. But after saving Sly here, they will go back to Dirtmouth and open up their own shop, so if you ever need anything from him, you can head back to Dirtmouth and buy some bits from him. But also here we can run into the Grub Father, who will reward you for every grub that you find throughout the world. This will net you many useful items and a whole lot of geo. And what do you get if you save all the grubs? No wonder he likes this game. By the way, for those uninformed, he doesn't just eat his children, he becomes their cocoon so that they can become butterflies. But anyway, now using our new spell, we can kill this armored boy, which now allows us to move forward and reach a new area with a more green color palette, coming to the Green Path, which is a really cool area which has the acidic water spread throughout the area, which is deadly to touch. Obviously, it's acid, and a lot of greenery and shrubbery is also there, which all the enemies also have that theme to them. And here we can find one of my favorite enemies, these guys. I like them, they look so soft and fluffy, and yes, I know they explode, but I love them. The enemies in this area not only match visually the area itself, but also they play into its theme. The Green Path has thick, lush vegetation, with many of the enemies actually hiding within the foliage itself, with them popping out when you get close to them. They almost camouflage into the area. This is something that Hollow Knight does very subtly, but it enhances its world so much more, and it gives all the areas distinct enemies and almost tells a story itself and explains why the enemies are there. They live there so they have adapted to the environments. In the Green Path as well, we can also meet the Hunter, who will gift us the Hunter's Journal, which will allow us to chronicle every enemy that we fight, allowing for the world itself to explain these enemies' behaviors, what they are, why they're here, in some detail. All enemies in this game have a paragraph or two explaining them and their story within the world, which, god damn, AAA games could only dream of doing something like this. It is so simple, but it just highlights Team Cherry's care and how they wanted every enemy to make sense and actually belong in the world itself. Every enemy is explained why they are the way they are, why they live in a certain area, why they act a certain way they do, why they attack a certain way. It just shows the level of care and the level of world building that they went out of their way to do to make this world feel so lived in. But in the Green Path, we also meet a very important character. Damn, it's the lass from Silksong's box. This is the Hornet, and she will kind of watch over our journey, occasionally jumping out to surprise us and guide us along the right path. Her presence is often associated with the game's main questline, and past her, the game will also teach us a technique of bouncing off enemies in platforming by hitting them, which I thought I'd highlight because the game is always teaching you things, showing that the game mechanically keeps evolving, and even at the end of the game I was still learning new techniques for platforming, which really surprised me, because I often found games lack in platforming areas, but man, Hollow Knight is really good with its platforming, and to me I think it was the better half of the game itself. Don't attack me, please. Now also here in the Green Path, we can eventually find another adventurer, and we need to save him from where he is because he's in a bit of trouble. So we quickly save and meet Zote the Mighty. Well, what a friendly fellow. Let us move along with us eventually reaching and meeting up with the Hornet again, and we can enter a boss fight with the Hornet herself. But defeating her, she dashes away and we can retrieve the Mothwing cloak. But also something happens. we see three distinct beings. Who are they? Well, they are very important and we will learn much more about them later. Now the cloak is a dash for our character, allowing us to jump and dash about, dodging stuff more easily. It allows us to cover much greater distances within our jumps as well, a much needed upgrade for platforming. And through this area we can reach a lake and meet Quirrell, another adventurer on his own quest, with a mask that matches one of those spirits that we just met. Anyway, in the green path we can eventually reach the Fog Canyon, another very unique area which has a very airy, floaty, bubbly atmosphere to it all. So what are the enemies here? Jellyfish, of course. I love it, it's so cool. But the Fog Canyon, while super cool, is honestly pretty small, so there isn't actually a lot here. We will come back here later to explore it fully, but here we can meet Millibel, the banker, which at first seems like a good way to keep your geo safe, but I sure do hope this character doesn't do a runner with the dosh that we store in the bank. Of course she does. She has a whole quest tied to her with her running away of your money that you give her and you have to go punt her down, but ignoring her and just east of her we can reach Queen Station, a station which connects a lot of the areas together, acting as a central hub with a stag station also being located within it. But connected to the Queen Station is the next area, the Fungal Waste, an area with not only the acidic water, but enemies and the area itself focusing on mushrooms. So most of the enemies produce a spore-like attack, which linger after the attack is done, which can still do damage to you. A really cool area with a very distinct atmosphere and a pretty cool soundtrack to it as well. I just like this area, it's a pretty fun area. But here we can meet a couple of key characters as well, mainly Leg Eater, a vendor, and Cloth, a companion who will be a friendly face on our journey and occasionally join us in combat. But again, we can also find the Hornet, and she will guide us to a dead end. So at first I headed over to the Mantis village, which is a village of course with Mantis type enemies. But we are here for a very important item, the Mantis Claw, which will allow us to cling onto walls and jump off of them, allowing us to actually climb up them. And descending to the bottom of the village, we can run into the Mantis Lord's boss fight, which you might find at this point quite challenging. I did. So if you're like me and you die a lot, you can just go off somewhere else and wander off. But if you die and try to do a run back, you will run into Quirrell. Quirrell here gives us some advice. Our nail isn't good enough and we should search for a nail smith to upgrade it in the city. So we reach a crossroads, either keep going and slamming our head into the wall in this boss fight, or we can go search for an upgrade for our weapon to make the fight easier. So we head back to where the Hornet was and go through this little platform puzzle with now the Mantis Claw being accessible to us, and we reach a statue. Using a city crest we found earlier, we can actually open up the gate and enter the next key area of the game, the City of Tears, and man, I love this area. This is easily my favourite area in the game. But here in the City of Tears we can meet our nailsmith and he can upgrade our nail. After getting our nail upgraded and walking past him, we can actually enter the city centre and we find a very important site. This statue is important, with it being a memorial to the Hollow Knight themselves, with it making some sort of sacrifice, being sealed in the Black Vault, allowing the Hallownest to remain eternal, which explains why the kingdom has lasted forever. The Hollow Knight here made some sort of sacrifice for something, which has allowed the kingdom of Hallownest to remain eternal. Now the City of Tears is easily my favourite area in the entire game, for good reasons. Not only visually is it one of the best looking areas, it is also the most diverse in terms of enemies to fight, and also things to do. This is one of the largest areas in the game with quite a lot going on. Also, I really love the rain and I love the music in this area as well. You will be returning to the City of Tears constantly to either engage with some of the vendors or to explore new parts of it that you've unlocked by getting some sort of new ability. Also, the City of Tears is instrumental to the main quest line. but also to me it's cool to see a glimpse into what this bug-like culture was actually like, how they lived their lives and what their city was actually built up like. It really does sort of focus that this was a real kingdom with a whole civilization that has completely been lost by whatever this plague is that has spread throughout it. Now the enemies here are not only the guard type of enemies with long spears, swords and shields, but also we can find mages in a specific area with the ability to teleport and throw fireballs. These wizard boys are technically in a different area, the Soul Sanctum, but the Soul Sanctum to me is kind of like a sub area of the City of Tears. But this area just displays that the society, they had these high intellect scholars that were able to cast spells, and this area's just biggest strength, just its variety in its enemy design, visuals, the locations to see, and of course boss fights, with the Soul Sanctum here having the Soul Master as a boss fight, and I really do like this boss fight. But defeating the Soul Master, it allows us to obtain the Desolate Dive ability, now allowing us to smash enemies and also smash through the floor on specific points. But with all these upgrades in hand, we can now head back to the Mantis Lords, scrap them, and eventually defeating them. Holy man! We can enter the Deep Nest, the darkest part of the game, with even the cartographer here cowering in fear. Now the Deep Nest is a really cool area, with a lack of light being the key theme here. It is the deepest part of Hallownest, with only the illumination of mushrooms giving any sort of light unless you purchased an upgrade to get a lantern. Now the Deep Nest in general is built up of all these long winding tunnels all over the place because a lot of the enemies burrow throughout the area, which explains why it's all just these long tunnels. These enemies have burrowed out the area, creating the Deep Nest itself. It's not a naturally occurring cave or something, it's just these long tunnels that have been burrowed out. Again, it ties in the enemies to the world itself. It explains why this area exists, because these type of creatures exist. But here we also get our first glimpses of the spider enemies, which climb all over the walls, which, yeah, if you've got arachnophobia, I'm sorry. But at this point in the game's progression really opened itself up, and I started running all over the place, with me heading all the way back to Dirtmouth, up the wall, and then with us reaching the Howling Cliffs, because I was curious. But we can also find another nailsmith up there who can teach us Cyclone Slash. But that's really it. We can also reach the Crystal Peaks, and this is the central mining area of the kingdom, with not only miners being present, no, not that kind, shut up, but also a bunch of enemies infected by the crystals themselves, which they are mining. But we can also find a very important site in a graveyard-like area. We find this. This is a monument to the Dreamers, which created the vessel that protects the Hollow Knight, ensuring that Hallownest lasts eternal. And with it, our map is marked with 3 points for Monomon the Teacher in the Archive, Lurien the Watcher in his spire in the city, and Hera the Beast in her den in the deep dark of the kingdom. And at this point, these descriptions should remind you of specific locations within the world. And now you need to hunt down these 3 to remove their seal on the Black Egg, so we can reach the Hollow Knight themselves. But we are transported somewhere, some sort of dream-like place, and something contacts us. And we are gifted the Dream Nail, and we meet Seer here, who saved us from being trapped by the Dreamers, and we are brought to the resting grounds. Now the Dream Nail allows us to collect these red orb things, which will allow us to be rewarded with some little gifts from Seer. But this nail will also allow us to engage with a new type of boss fight, Warrior Dream fights, and also Dream boss fights, which are kind of the boss fights, but again, and a bit harder. These fights are pretty challenging, and way more challenging than the normal boss fights, and they just add a higher level of difficulty to the game, but they are kind of optional for the most part, because if you want to get one of the endings, you'll kind of figure out that you have to do a lot of these boss fights just to get the currency used here by Seer to eventually upgrade your Dream Nail. But at this point in the game, we are focused entirely on finding those 3 Dreamers in order to break the seal, and this part of the game is very back and forth. I'm going to be skipping over hours of gameplay for me, because I was just exploring the world, trying to figure out what to do, and just figure out where the fuck I was going. First of all, we can find our way down to the Ancient Basin, an area similar to the Deep Nest, but what seems to be a much older area of the city itself, or let's say a more storied area of the city. This seems to be more of where the royal palace was, with us being able to find the ruins themselves, and we can also find a fountain seemingly dedicated to what seems to be some sort of royalty. This is the Pale King to be exact, the King of Hollownest. But we can't really do anything here, as we need some sort of item or upgrade to progress further into the area. So now we head into the Royal Waterway, which is the sewer system of the City of Tears, and this area is also really cool. A lot of slimy enemies, from pufferfish to these weird worm things that you have to kill 3 times to defeat them. But also here we can find a lot of orange eggs, like something has infected the waterways itself, laying its eggs here, which might explain how the plague itself spread throughout the kingdom. Something was laying something in the waterways which the people were using, so they drank the water and became infected. But here we also fight the Dung Defender, the defender of the dung. Defeating him, we can turn a switch on that seems to turn on some sort of liquid and allows it to flow through to somewhere. Anyway, now I've started making actual progress to all 3 of the dreamers, and I'll be honest, you will have a feeling of where the fuck am I meant to go. It is not meant to be easy to figure out where you are actually meant to go to find these dreamers, because this is the final objective of the base game itself before the final boss fight. But before we do that, in the Crystal Peaks we can find a much needed ability, the Crystal Heart ability, which will allow us to Superman across large abysses on the map, and this of course opens up some more paths in previous areas, which we will need to explore now. But we can also head over and fight the Lost Kin to grab the Monarch Wings, giving us the ability to also double jump, now giving us every ability that we need to reach these dreamers. So first of all, we ascended the spire and we were able to fight the Watcher Knight, and after beating them we can reach the Watcher's spire and we can find the Watcher asleep on their bed. Hitting it with the Dream Nail, we enter a dreamlike state and we can find the Watcher in the dream. Defeating the Watcher and absorbing them, it has some sort of worldly impact, with the black egg losing one of its masks embedded within it. These dreamers of course acted as a seal containing whatever is in the egg, so removing them from their dreams removes their seal. So let's go find the other ones now then. And throughout this further exploration I found another nailsmith teaching me a new technique, but now in the deep nest we eventually find Hera and can remove her seal, and of course with enough running around we can remove the final seal. And now we can actually start to talk about the endings of the game itself. So with us heading towards the Black Egg Temple, we can see that the plague itself has started to infect and spread out from the egg itself, with the Forgotten Crossroads entirely being engulfed by whatever this plague is, this orange substance. And actually reaching the Black Egg Temple, we find a final checkpoint and bench which allows us to rest before the boss fight, and heading inside we can find what the fate of the Hollow Knight is. He is tied up and chained down like the plague is trying to be contained and kept where it is, and unleashing him, we enter the boss fight with the Hollow Knight. Now the Hollow Knight itself is a really fun boss fight, and it is just really interesting because it tells a story within itself. Because at one point in its 3rd stage, the Hollow Knight will start stabbing itself, and it almost is telling us that the Hollow Knight is fighting against itself, like the plague is controlling it. And it's very clear the Hollow Knight doesn't actually want to harm us, it's trying to save us and kill itself so it doesn't hurt us. But once we beat the Hollow Knight, we will reach a fork in a road which will lead to 1 of 5 endings now. God help me. Right, let's get the easy one out of the way. Ending 1, the Hollow Knight. Basically, you kill the Hollow Knight, you absorb the infection out of it, with you now becoming the new Hollow Knight, with the Black Egg itself now sealing us, repeating the cycle of the kingdom maintaining the standard of what has happened, ensuring that it remains eternal forever. It is the bad ending. I mean, kind of. It's bad for the knight or our protagonist here, but to me it displays a theme that is rather interesting that I don't think many people actually see within this ending. For this ending, you have to do the bare minimum that the game wants you to. You have to find the 3 dreamers and kill them and then head to the black egg. You barely scratch the surface of what this game actually has to offer, and you can completely ignore a few areas within this game to reach this ending. And hey, it's kind of like life. If you do the bare minimum, you aren't really going to change the world in any meaningful way or really achieve anything great. Nothing wrong with that. Some people do like having a life like that, but if you want to change the world or make a statement and be remembered, you need to do more. You can't just do the bare minimum. If you do the bare minimum, you are going to be fed and used by the world that created us. You don't really get the chance to stand out. You will work probably a fairly boring job and live a fairly boring life that is very similar to many others. You won't stand out, you will blend in. Because we didn't take the initiative and push and try to make a difference and try to reach some sort of height, we don't get rewarded with it. We don't get rewarded with a good ending, in a sense. Yes, we helped the kingdom and we helped save, hopefully, everyone in it, but will we be remembered for this sacrifice? Will we be remembered as the second Hollow Knight, or will we just be remembered as a Hollow Knight? Will we be just merged into one figure, which that might be what that statue is in the center. It is a cycle. There isn't just one Hollow Knight, there is thousands, millions of them that have been fed to this cycle to ensure that the status quo is kept. We will most likely just fade into history and be another name that is forgotten to feed this world. We won't be remembered as an individual, but as a collective. And I kind of like the link here that I thought of. It reminds me of how soldiers are remembered when they die in battle for their country. We don't know any of the soldiers. Unless you know them personally, you will very likely be unable to name any soldiers that died in Iraq, Afghanistan, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, all these big conflicts. You won't really be able to name anyone unless you know them personally. We just remember them as the soldiers we lost. Yes, we honor them, but we don't really remember them, and they can be very easily lost to time if we let that happen. It's a cool link, I think, and it's an interesting ending that kind of ties into the theme that the world will just use you and just discard you when it doesn't need you anymore or it needs to replace you. Kind of like life. If you work at any company, I'm sure you felt this. It's a very interesting ending to me, and I think it's the one that you can look into the most and see a lot of themes and messages throughout it. And it is my favorite ending. Despite being the bad ending, I just like it because it's so simple and effective, and it tells such a heavy theme within it that I think can really be applied to life, that you need to do more to reach better results. So, what if we do more? Well, let's go to Ending 2. Ending 2, called the Sealed Siblings Ending, requires us to obtain the Void Heart item, which in itself requires us to obtain the King Soul from both the Pale King in his area, and we have to do this really long, really annoying platforming section in a dream world, which you first have to upgrade to a dream nail by getting 1800 of them little dream orb things, which means you need to do quite a lot of side activities. But the platforming in the dream section is really fun, I will be honest, I do really enjoy it. But we get the other half from the Pale Lady, which is way easier to obtain and actually reach. It's just a boss fight you have to get through. But with the King Soul assembled, you now descend into the abyss and you can access a brand new area which you can open, and within it you find our birthplace, the birthplace of the knights themselves, which is a black egg. And here we can also find out what happened to us when we were a child, and also that the Pale King is seemingly our father and the Hollow Knight is our sibling. We were discarded as an unnecessary vessel, most likely. The Hollow Knight himself was picked out probably because he was the most promising one, and we were just an extra, a spare, if you will. But we can also see there is thousands, hundreds of thousands of other knights that have been discarded. They are vessels to contain this infection that is spreading throughout the kingdom. So there's the White Lady. The Pale King and the White Lady most likely had many of these vessels made, but discarded most of them, only using one, maybe 2, 3 throughout the ages to contain this infection. It is our sole purpose to contain this infection. That is all we are meant to do. And here, once we see this, our King Soul turns into a Void Heart, with it permanently being embedded within our being. And now we can head back to the Black Egg, fight the Hollow Knight again, and gain access to 2 new endings. Ending 2, the Sealed Siblings, which is us just defeating the Hollow Knight normally. The Hornet will come in to help us, but due to our stupidity inability or slowness, the Hollow Knight gets back up and we fully defeat it, absorbing the plague, sealing the black egg again, with the Hornet still being inside, causing her to become a seal for our egg. What is the meaning of this ending? It's a bit more difficult, this one, but to me this is entirely the worst ending. If the other one was a bad ending, this is the worst ending you can possibly achieve, as the Hornet herself as well is also sacrificed alongside the Knight, and we don't even use the Void Heart at all. The thing that we spent all our time getting, which you could link to people not using what they gain in their lives to actually better it, we just waste it. Think of people that go to, I hate to say it, go to university. They get a very flashy degree and they don't use it, either because they can't use it because they can't find a job that requires it, or because it is basically a worthless degree. For any of the younger people out there, don't pick a degree that's useless. It is a waste of not only your money, but also time. There is quite a few degrees out there that are just worthless. Don't even bother with them. But it could also link to people what they do have in life, but they don't make a simple change to better it in such a meaningful way. Changing one or two habits that just improve their lives completely. I know quite a few people who complain about money problems, not having enough money to do what they want, but they will still spend half their day's wages on cigarettes, booze, or going abroad to another country when they don't really have the money to spend on something like that. Honestly, spend what you want money on, but don't complain to people when you waste it. Now with this new seal as well, with the Hornet inside the egg, that also creates a problem. The seal is technically unbreakable. The Hornet is sealing an entrance to herself, so nothing can actually get into the black egg because they can't break the seal. To break the seal, they need to defeat the Hornet. The Hornet, though, is inside the egg. It's an impossible problem. You cannot solve it. You cannot fix it. So this means that if the vessel, us, starts to fail like the Hollow Knight did first, a slight problem occurs. We cannot be replaced. We will just slowly start leaking the plague out, with it eventually entirely escaping and dooming the kingdom completely. We have now numbered the days on the Eternal Kingdom. Eventually it will come to fall to the plague itself. So yeah, we really, so not only did we sacrifice the Hornet, we also doomed the entire kingdom as well, which, yeah, we really failed at our job, didn't we? But again, we were dealt a fairly decent hand with us obtaining the Void Heart, and the Hornet came to help us, but we just played it horribly and lost the plot. Well, what about ending 3? So when defeating the Hollow Knight, the Hornet jumps in and uses the Dream Nail on the Hollow Knight, which will allow us to meet the creator of this plague within a dreamlike state. The cause of all this death, a moth, named the Radiance, a higher being who was once a very influential figure, as throughout your journey you might have noticed a lot of moth statues scattered about. And these were more specifically in the ruin areas, especially in older areas of the kingdom, like Culling Cliffs. And this boss fight, man, it's hard. It's a jump above the Hollow Knight themselves, but I don't think it's the moveset. It's just because the attacks do 2 masks of damage instead of 1, and there is very little opportunities to actually heal. If you have 7 health, you get 4 hits. If you have 9, 5. You get very little opportunities at failure here, and what is really fun is that if you die, you have to fight the Hollow Knight again, and then the Radiance. It is a great boss fight, don't get me wrong, but it is really, really tough, because it is just kind of crazy to have to not only beat the Hollow Knight, but then also beat the Radiance and have to learn all the moveset, and the moveset is kind of annoying. It is very much a bullet hell where you just have to dodge and attack when you can and not get too greedy, but it took me a good while, I will be completely honest. But eventually beating the Radiance, the Hollow Knight themselves will ascend and become a shade figure being and will join us in the fight as well.
Oh my god, fuck, I did it. Literally have to fucking cheat.
So to me, this ending here was the true ending of the game, and the best one in my eyes as well. With the knight seemingly sacrificing itself, becoming the Lord of Shades, it destroys the Radiance, eliminating the plague entirely from the kingdom, with the Shades now lacking a leader as the Lord of Shades is also destroyed, seemingly. Honestly, it's kind of hard to tell what actually happened because it's very cryptic. But basically, the two siblings overcame the Radiance and destroyed it, getting rid of the plague within the kingdom, but sacrificing the knight's physical body in the meantime. This was against what the knight was meant to do. The knight was meant to contain the plague, not destroy it. Probably because the Pale King didn't think it was possible. But the knights found a way to outgrow and move past their destinies. They found a way to do something greater. It took work and a hell of a lot of time and pain and suffering in that boss fight, but we were able to actually make a significant change in the world. We are able to step above and not just be used by the world itself, but push it forward, which is very clearly a key theme Hollow Knight has set out. Not only a rejection of authority with the knight going against their father and mother's desire to be the next vessel, but also choosing its own path. And while this change that the Pale King made to the bugs to allow them to choose what they want to do led to its downfall, with many of them choosing to look towards something else and dreaming of something, inviting the dream plague in, it is also what saved them, with the knight themselves, the player, having the ability to make the choice to save the world, to keep pushing forward to try and make that difference, which is kind of like real life itself. We all have free choice and we can't save yourself or help yourself if you don't want to do it yourself, if you don't do it. We all have free will, and while some people might make the wrong decisions, it's up to you to make sure that you try your best to make the right decisions more often than not. Not everyone's perfect. You're not going to make the right decisions all the time, but if you can understand when you made the wrong decisions and learn from that, you will grow significantly. Because if you don't take that initiative and you don't want to help yourself and you don't make the effort to try better your life, it's not going to get better. You're just going to be used by the world itself and kind of just end up in a place where you might not want to be. To me, this is the true ending of the game, entirely. It makes the most sense to me, and these were the only 3 endings in the base game before DLC added more endings. And honestly, I think this is where the game kind of ends. If you just wanted to play the game base and you didn't really have any interest in going exploring the DLC and diving into that, you don't really need to, because the DLCs have some cool quests, don't get me wrong, which I'm not going to dive into. If you want to experience them, go for it. But the main DLC that has the endings is kind of a boss rush one where you have to kind of almost complete the game entirely to get these endings. So let's go over these next 2 endings. To me, these 2 endings are more kind of teasers of what is to come next from Hollow Knight. This was probably when the game did significantly well, sold millions of copies, and Team Cherry realized, holy fuck, we can actually make a big next game, that being Silksong. Because Silksong originally was just going to be a DLC, I'm pretty sure, but it obviously expanded into a big game, and I think this ending sets up the future of Hollow Knight a lot more. So let's quickly go over it. Instead of fighting the Hollow Knight themselves, we need to make our way to the Pantheon of Hollownest, with the Godseeker here kind of forcing us to do all these boss rush modes. Honestly, I'm not going to spoil it. Do it all yourself. It is pretty fun to go all over the world hunting the bosses down and then being able to do these boss rushes. But basically, you go through all the Pantheons and eventually you will reach the final one, which obviously has the Radiance as the final boss. And it is very hard, I will be honest. It is very, very hard. It takes the bosses from the base game and upgrades them to another level, makes them even harder. So be prepared, and you're very much going to need to get all the upgrades, all the items scattered throughout the world that give you that bonuses that you need, and you need to learn the bosses completely. But here we get 2 new endings, with each one having a tiny minute difference that is barely a difference, which I'll quickly comment on once we get it. We have the Embrace the Void ending and the Delicate Flower ending. So we destroy the Radiance again, but this time in a very different form. The true Lord Shade form appears. I'm guessing that's what this is, because it is very different to what the Knight was before, and we don't have the Hollow Knight, our sibling, with us this time, so we kind of just unleash our full power. And now this void is unleashed upon the world, and the Knight takes the Godseeker and engulfs them with the void. And in the real world, outside of the dream god realm thing, the void starts to leak out of the Godseeker themselves. And depending on if you met the condition and gave a flower to a specific person, place, thing, the Godseeker will either unleash that void on the kingdom, spreading it throughout, or be teleported away or destroyed or whatever it means when the delicate flower pops off and engages. I don't know, because we're never told. And a post-credit scene after all that shows the Hornet waiting outside the black egg, waiting for us to come, and instead of the knight coming out, or the knight even coming to fight the Hollow Knight inside the egg, the Hollow Knight themselves comes out and appears in front of the Hornet, with the Hornet readying for battle, but it cuts off before we see what happens. So either the Hollow Knight was unleashed upon the world, or the plague was completely released from it and is now leaving the black egg and returning to civilization, potentially teasing a protagonist for a future game. And this is what I mean, it doesn't really add anything. It fulfills the same kind of meaning in sort of what the third ending did, but there is obviously one big difference. The Hollow Knight themselves physically still survives in this ending, and that probably means this is going to be the canon ending, because I don't see how, if the Hollow Knight themselves is a protagonist in the third game, how the third ending would be canon, or the first or the second ending where that ending we kill it. This is very much a reward for very dedicated fans who went through all that struggle to get to this ending. We rid the kingdom of the infection, most likely, by eliminating the purest form of the radiance, the absolute radiance, which seemingly, once that is destroyed, we remove the plague entirely from the kingdom. Honestly, I am not qualified to talk about this ending enough, because I'm not familiar enough with the lore of Hollow Knight. I haven't dived deep into the lore. I'm somewhat familiar with it now, but honestly, go look up an ending explained video to really understand this ending in full detail, because even me having to do that, I still don't really get what this ending is trying to tell us. But I think in the future years, this ending will make a lot more sense. Also, apparently in Silksong, this ending is hinted towards as well. So yeah, go play the game for yourself and make your own decision, and play Silksong as well if you want, because I haven't even played Silksong yet. The questions you have after this ending might be answered. But what is the meaning of all of this? All these endings, the whole game, what is the meaning of it to me? When you strip away the lore, the mystery, and all the boss fights, Hollow Knight is really just about persistence, about something small refusing to give up, in a world that's already fallen apart. Hollownest is a ruined kingdom. It's what happens when pride, fear, and ambition eat away at everything until there's nothing left but echoes of what was once there. Every corner of the world feels like it used to mean something, a civilization that reached too far, that tried to preserve itself by sealing away its own infection instead of facing it and trying to destroy it, defeat it, cure it. Every enemy you fight was once someone with a purpose within this world, and all of them people, all of them citizens of this kingdom had a dream. They had a place in this grand system that's now forgotten, and in the middle of all that decay, the knight themselves just keeps moving. It doesn't talk, it doesn't question, it just goes, quietly but relentlessly. And there's something painfully human about that, because life kind of feels like that sometimes. You wake up, you do what you have to do, you try to make sense of it, and most days you don't really know if it's leading anywhere. You just keep pushing, because stopping feels a hell of a lot worse. And that's what Hollow Knight captures so perfectly to me. The sense of wandering through something ancient and broken, trying to piece together what happened before you got here, and figuring out where you fit in all of this story. But it's not just about persistence itself, it's also about cycles. Hollownest is built on repetition, the same mistakes, the same patterns, the same attempts to contain something that can't be contained forever. The Pale King tried to build perfection and ended up destroying everything. The Dreamers tried to preserve the kingdom by sleeping forever. Even the Knight, depending on how you play, can end up becoming another part of that same endless loop of trying to preserve something that is falling. And that is such a human thing. The human tendency to repeat what we swore we'd never do, inherit problems from people before us and call it progress. We build systems, we ruin them, we rebuild them again, and somehow we convince ourselves it's different this time. Even personally, I'm sure many of you will repeat the same mistakes. Relationships fall apart and then you'll get back together saying that it'll be different this time. It never does. The same mistakes crop up if you never confront it fully. And then there's identity itself. You're playing as something that technically shouldn't exist, a vessel themselves, and empty by design. You weren't made to have a greater purpose for yourself. You were made to contain something. You were made for something. But through the journey and through the struggle of the world, the night becomes something. Not because it was destined to, but because it chose to become something else. And that's what hit hardest for me. It's the idea that identity isn't something you're given. It's something you build out of what is left around you. You make meaning out of the scars that are inflicted upon you, your mistakes, the ruins you walk through, the memories of everything that's happened. And then of course there's a theme of sacrifice, which quite a few characters are sacrificed in this game for the greater good. The Dreamers, the Hollow Knight, potentially the Knight themselves, the Hornet. But what makes it very tragic is that none of these characters get to see what the results of that sacrifice actually was, if it was worth it, and that's another reflection of real life. Most of what we do, good or bad, it echoes forward in ways that we'll never actually be able to see, and it's kind of terrifying in a way, but it's also beautiful. It means that our choices, no matter how big or small, will always matter because the effect that they could potentially have on others is huge. Even if no one remembers the little things you did or potentially the big thing you did and your name is forgotten in time. Because in a way, we live in our own version of Hallownest itself, not as dark or as quiet as Hallownest is, but filled with the same kind of decay. Systems that are failing, that don't work anymore. People stuck in loops that are almost impossible to break out of. Old dreams still echoing through everyone, even though no one can actually obtain them anymore. But like the night, we keep moving through it, working, creating, trying to make something out of the ruins. Because the alternative is doing nothing, and that feels worse. And that's, to me, the quiet truth of Hollow Knight. It leaves you with. The world will decay, people will forget, and everything we build will eventually fall apart. But meaning still exists in the act of moving forward. The knight wasn't made to be a hero, or to be remembered as such, but it fought anyway. It chose to fight. And that choice, however small, is everything, because meaning isn't handed to us. It's something we carve out ourselves, one tiny swing at a time in the dark. And that's what Hollow Knight reminded me of, that even when everything else feels empty, the act of still moving forward means you're alive. Because maybe that's all life really is. Walking through the ruins, trying to leave something behind that lasts a little longer than we do. Hello lads and lasses, thanks for watching, and sorry this video took me a while to make. I've been distracted, mainly due to Battlefield 6, and if you can't tell by my voice now, I've got a very bad cold. So this video would have been done probably 2 days earlier. Genuinely could barely speak, and now it's like barely audible. Yeah, thank you for being patient with me, and hopefully my voice will be better soon because I do want to keep recording some stuff. But yeah, let's quickly do all the members because of course I need to do that real quick. Thank you to all channel members, including Chelsea Tyler, Marty Morris, Game Scavenger, Rat, Artman XP, Darren76, It's Bert, Carter Phillips, Corrego, Zerolino, Kento, Erman the Turk, Ashley, Seagood, Julian Sasinski, Not Saber, Jen Caliber, Jamie Barrett, Juniper LP, Lolink12, and Damn La Rat. Thank you for the support, it genuinely means everything. Next video, I haven't fully decided on what I want to do next. It's a toss-up between 2 or 3 videos. Either a multiplayer focused video for Battlefield that just came out, so I can try and make a new kind of video, and then obviously that would lead into me making the Counter-Strike video, which was going to be my 20k video, or a video on Ready or Not, because I've been playing that a lot recently and I find it really interesting from not only a gameplay standpoint, but also from a story standpoint. I find it fascinating. So let me know. But yeah, let me know any games that you guys want me to see. I do see every suggestion, well, mostly. Sometimes the comments do get a bit clogged up. If you want to suggest any games to me, the best place to do it would be on my Discord server. That link is in the description down below. So if there's a game that you specifically want me to do, link it in the game suggestions there. Hopefully in the future, when I have the time to really sit down and play some games, I'll be able to do some more events and stuff within the server, because I want to do sort of game nights in the server where I just play multiplayer games for the night and you guys can join in, and obviously I could then turn that into a video. My idea is to do that with Battlefield, to sort of give myself a way to learn it and sort of work out the kinks before I move on to a more challenging video. Like Counter-Strike will definitely be a very challenging video for me to make and also to figure out how to make it. And of course in the future with other games that are coming out relatively soon that I'm interested in, and potentially this also could lead into horror multiplayer games being a thing that I might cover on the channel, and any other multiplayer games that I find interesting. But that's entirely enough waffling from me. Thank you again for all the support. I'm gonna go give my voice some rest now, and hopefully I'll be better in the morning. See you around. Crocodile.